Logic steps. These are the diamond shape blue steps or blocks, same thing, on your flow. And these are not seen by the player, but they are very useful when you want to, for example, here you can see an example, the story flow can go to two different directions based on certain conditions. So logic steps allow us to control these, and let's take a look. I'm going to open up this logic step here, and the UI looks a bit confusing, but don't worry, I will go through everything. On the top here, this first block here is a condition group. We have a couple of conditions here. Then we have the next group here, which is just a couple of actions that will happen if the condition was true. And then there's the next group, which is else. So if the conditions weren't true, what happens? And then more comments, and it's rinse and repeat the same stuff over and over again. So what we actually have here is an example that we would read as follows. There is two conditions here on the top, and because this and here is selected, both of them need to be true for this true condition to happen. So if variable turn equals the variable players count, here we can see that it's a variable, and if variable scoring equals true, so the value of variable scoring is true, which is a value, then we increment variable round by 1, which is a value. We could also switch this to variable, so it would increase the value by another variable. And we want to set the next block to be step 3b. If these conditions weren't true, then we don't do these actions at all, but instead we do this action, and we toggle variable scoring. Now scoring here is a Boolean variable, which means it can either be true or false. So if it was true, it will be false. If it was false, it will be true. So this is an example of a condition here. So if I go out from this logic block, we can see that the story by default, let's look at the inspector, will go to step 3a. And that's why that's the default output is the bright gray one here. Now, if the condition is true, we do go to the step 3b. As we can see here, we're setting the next block to 3b. So if the condition is true, then the story can go here. So this is how the story can fork due to a logic block. So let's look a bit more about these. So we have on this screen now two sets of logic. The first one starts from top and it ends to the where the cow falls conditional action object, which doesn't mean anything to me either, so don't worry about that. But that's the gray line is the last one here. And then the second one is a new group of logic. So I can move this, for example, to happen first, and then it's going to be this one. So you can reorganize these. Also, you can reorganize the actions within one set of logic. So I can either even actually remove that. So this is now just one group of logic. Conditions are at the top. True actions that will happen if the conditions were true, actions that will happen if the conditions were false, and also if we want to do subsequent actions or conditions, those would be built under these. So here, for example, I could add another condition here, add condition if turn is 5. So this would happen that if this condition was true, we're going to do these actions here. And additionally, if turn is 5, we would do these actions also. So these allow you to just build more like conditions within conditions sort of functions. And this button allows you to add a new group of logic. Remember to save. If you exit the logic editor without saving, you lose all the changes you made, and this is where you close the logic editor. Now let's look at actions. There are 10, 11 different actions available. And roughly these can be put into three different categories. There are mathematical functions, there are flow control actions, and then variable actions where you modify variables. Let's look at the mathematical functions first. And they are increment variable, so you add to that decrement, which is you minus, take something away, multiply variable, and divide variable. That's pretty straightforward. So right now we have increment variable round by 1. If we could have multiply variable round by 5, or we could use a variable here, multiply round by turn. Oops. So now whatever the value of turn is, it would use that to multiply the value of round. And then the new value of round would be the one that was multiplied. Remember that right now in these mathematical functions, you can only use variables that are said to be numbers. So for example, I couldn't here use any other number. For example, scoring here is a Boolean, so this doesn't even offer me scoring as an option here because you can't multiply with that or do mathematical functions with the Boolean. So those are the four mathematical functions. One thing that should be mentioned, you can use values that are, for example, half. Yeah, it didn't work. What's happening? All right, apparently you can't. You can use full numbers. And if you try to divide a variable, let's say the value of round, let me actually use, so let's set variable round, for example, to 5. And then I want to divide that variable by 3. Now, the value that it will output will be the closest whole number. So in this case, it would be 1 or 2. No, 2. And then the flow control actions are set next block, go to next, and go to block. So go to block, go to next, and set next block. And the difference with these are that set next block, just this is the same as setting the next block variable to a value. So I could just do set variable next block and then the block name here. So it just sets the variable to that value and then continues with the actions. So set next block is exactly that same thing, but just a faster way to do that. Go to next cancels the rest of the actions and immediately goes to step whatever the value of the next block is, that's where it's going to go immediately. And go to block, same thing, except you get to define here specifically where to go from here, and the rest of the actions and conditions, everything is cancelled. I tend to prefer using set next block, so all the actions still happen, and every logic block automatically ends with a go to next. So there is a hidden go to next command in the end because we can't stay forever at the logic block. So once we've done all the actions, go to next will automatically be done, and whatever happens to be the value of the next block at that moment will be the block that the flow will go to. And then finally, variable actions. Set variable allows you to set a value manually into a variable. Copy variable allows you to take a value from a variable to another variable, and here you have to use the same kind of variable. So round is a number variable, so I can put to any other of my variables that are numbers. And then we have set random number, which allows you to randomize a number into a variable. Let's, for example, I want to randomize a number between 5 and 30, or maybe I'm doing a dice roller d20, so randomize a number between 1 and 20. So this would now randomize the value, minimum being 1, maximum being 20, and save that into the round. And toggle variable means that it switches the value of a Boolean variable from true, between true and false, depending what it was, it's going to be the other one after this action. And then conditions in logic step. So on top here we have two conditions, and both of them need to be true for us to do the true actions, and else we're going to. And you can add new conditions, you can remove them with these buttons. So add condition, there's one condition here, you can add, I accidentally hit the wrong button, so deleted all of them. So adding conditions happen here. I have three conditions here now. I can also add a group and then conditions underneath this group. So what happens here, all of these three things now would need to be true, and then also these two for this whole condition group to be true, and then we do these actions. Now, if I, for example, set OR to these two, it means that all of these three need to be true up here, but then one of these will need to be true, or the other way around. One of these would need to be true, or both of these would need to be true. This is already pretty complex, and I've never even so far used such a complex condition, but you can add these groups and conditions as needed. And just one note that at the end here, if you want to use a value, make sure that this says val, and if you want to use a variable, click it to switch it to a variable mode, so then you can use a variable here. Operators. So these numbers or attributes here are operators that allow you to do these conditions, comparing values to each other. So for example, if turn equals, let's switch to this value, if turn equals 5, then we do something. And because turn is a number, we can actually use a lot of different operators here. Is it equal to 5? Is it not equal to 5? Is it greater than 5? Greater than or equal to 5? Less than or equal to 5? And remember that you can only use these with numbers. If I select any other variable here, let's use scoring. So because scoring is a Boolean variable, I can only compare it to it's either true or it's false. And now my operators, because it's not a number, we can't do a math function comparison. That's why it's equal if scoring equals true or scoring is not equal to true. So with any other variable type, you can only have these two options. It's either is something or it isn't. And that is how you build logic steps in Dized.